April 1st, 1997.
Pokémon Get だぜ!
The first episode of the Pokemon anime premieres, bringing the fantastical creatures to life in gorgeous animation by OLM, and introducing us to Ash Ketchum. Now, years later, while the Pokemon anime continues onward, Ash has made his exit from the series. And while reruns of the first season were exactly what I grew up with, it's been forever since I actually sat down to watch any of them. Does the original series hold up? Is it any good? Well, grab your favorite snack and get ready because this is Pokemon, the beginning. So episode 1 of Pokemon is appropriately titled I Choose You. And it legitimately has been so long since I've seen it that I was surprised to be reminded that the very first episode begins with a recreation of the iconic battle between Gengar and Nidorino that transitions into a full-on brawl at the Pokemon League. There's really something about using this imagery to begin the story, because it appropriately sets us in the world that aims to take what we loved about the video games and bring it into an anime while also doing something new. And after showing the battle for a bit, we get one more transition pulling back to discover that our protagonist is watching that same battle on television. Interesting that we kind of get a zoom into this battle only for it to zoom back out, presenting this match as something that while it's not physically there, is being viewed as something attainable. When we boot up the Game Boy game, it's one of the first things we see. While in the anime, the first time we see Ash Ketchum, he's watching the same battle. Just a way of presenting this boy as someone in the same position as us. Ash is excitable as anyone would be, spending all night thinking about which Pokemon he'll choose as his partner in the morning. Though it is interesting watching this in retrospect, knowing that he'll eventually get to have all three. Due to the fact that he accidentally destroyed his alarm clock, he oversleeps and thus is too late to actually receive any of them. We do also get introduced to Gary, who's set up as the rival, always one step ahead of Ash and not too shy about letting him know this. It's all groundwork that's being laid for literally hundreds of episodes in a natural way. Already, the plot progression for this episode is really well done, continuing as Ash is hit with the realization Charmander, Squirtle, and Bulbasaur are all gone. Instead, Professor Oak reluctantly allows him to take a Pikachu with a difficult personality, and the rest of the episode focuses on the beginnings of their relationship. But from all of this, we really get a sense of who Ash is. He's just like any other 10-year-old who loves Pokemon on top of being a little foolhardy, very unlucky, but endlessly optimistic and determined to never give in. I really love that upon meeting Pikachu, he's excited, he thinks it's cute, despite the fact he won't be starting with any of the Pokemon he had planned to, and that Professor Oak tries to warn him this will be difficult, even after Pikachu continuously gives him nasty looks, refuses to go inside its Pokeball, and will not stop shocking him. At no point does Ash even think about returning him or giving up. There's a bit of a rough patch in the middle of the episode where Ash attempts to catch a Pokemon without Pikachu's help, but his personality remains consistent and it makes him easy to follow. But now comes time for the climax of the episode as Ash accidentally angers a Spearow that gathers a flock to attack him and Pikachu, who gets hurt in the scuffle. The tension is kept so well as we know at this point how much of a novice trainer Ash is. The responsibility falls on him to protect Pikachu from the Spearow, and we were just shown how he struggled against a single Pidgey. And things are kept interesting moving from one location to another, even after taking a quick break to introduce Misty and for Ash to steal her bike. It feels like the climax of the episode comes together perfectly as it even starts to rain and Pikachu seems to be fading out due to its injury. And finally, after falling off the bike and having nowhere else to run, Ash's determination, selfless attitude, and self-confidence is on full display here. It's only a flock of angry birds, but the stakes are perfectly high for this first episode. Just the way that the lighting and the atmosphere along with the music help to make Ash's speech stand out, it legitimately gets me every time. Up to and including this point, everything has felt so tightly written that it makes for the perfect payoff to the moment Pikachu finally musters the strength to fight alongside Ash. The fact that we're only shown frames all illuminated by a single flash of lightning just means that it all happens in an instant, probably even too fast for Ash or the Spearow to even really know what's going on. And finally, the resolution to this episode gives us our first happy ending as well as hope for the future of brand new Pokemon, as Ho-Oh soars above. I know rainbows are literally just what happens after the rain, but because of that, they symbolize hope and new beginnings, which is the message you'd want to get across when intentionally adding one into an animated medium. When it's all said and done, I think this first episode of Pokemon is nearly perfect. It does everything it needs to do, being the beginning of the journey. We get a feel for the major characters, an idea of the setting, a taste of the comedy, a hint of the action, and a strong emotional through line that pays off tremendously. As a whole, the first season of Pokemon, and really the entire series at times, is held back by things like limited or reused animation, which is really just a product of how the episodes are produced, each one being released week after week with almost no breaks in between. That's really the only major criticism I would levy against the first season, and at certain points this specific episode, but because this one is the first episode, there isn't too much of it and it's not noticeable or distracting. Everything else about it shines through any imperfections, and even then, the animation on display in this first episode in particular is beautiful, and I would say that it holds up, much more so than any of Pokemon's contemporaries. I really just wanted to revisit the first episode of the Pokemon anime on its anniversary for fun and memories, though it still feels kind of weird to end things right here when Pikachu is literally dying, so maybe one more episode wouldn't hurt.
Today's all-new Pokémon will return in a moment on Kids WB. And now, back to an all-new Pokémon on Kids WB.
Episode 2, Pokemon Emergency, is the immediate follow-up to the first episode, as we follow Ash and Pikachu on their way to the Viridian City Pokemon Center with their injuries. Misty is hot on their trail after retrieving what's left of her bike, and of course, we are also introduced to Team Rocket's Jessie, James, and Meowth. If you're watching the English dub, then at this point James was voiced by Ted Lewis and Meowth was voiced by Nathan Price. They both do a great job, and honestly I think Nathan Price's Meowth is pretty underrated, but I will say I'm much happier with their later portrayals by Eric Stewart and Maddie Blaustein respectively. Thankfully, Ash is able to get Pikachu the medical attention it needs, as we're also introduced to Officer Jenny or Nurse Joy. While Ash is sitting in the waiting area, the tone of the episode becomes pretty sad, and that's an interesting direction, though it does make sense. Sure, Ash and Pikachu did make it out alive from the skirmish of the last episode, but they just barely made it. Again, Ash's positive traits were exactly what he needed in the moment. But now reflecting on the circumstances he was dealt and having to deal with it, he's starting to lose his confidence that he had. We were just shown that that's one of the things he needed to get through those difficult times. So now we're following him as he starts to lose some of it. And now Ash and Misty are firmly in it together as she tracks him down to confront him. But of course they allow Pikachu some time to rest after it looks like it'll be okay. But I think this serves as a great episode to properly introduce these other important characters, because once Team Rocket shows up they're actually pretty threatening here. This is a Pokemon Center in a small town with only 3 people in the building, and a Pikachu that's out of commission. It's also pretty cool getting to see how the Pokemon Center works and has backup plans for emergency situations like this, including an escape plan for the Pokemon and a Pikachu powered generator. And getting to see that Misty's able to work together with the group, distracting Team Rocket so Ash can get away, is great. And I especially enjoy the moment where Ash is cornered with a now revitalized Pikachu and uses what's left of the bicycle to generate an extra boost of energy, which is exactly what Pikachu needs to defeat Team Rocket for the day. It's not exactly dwelt on for too long, but I see this as the closing of the doubts that Ash was having earlier. He felt like there was nothing he could do for Pikachu. After all, in the last episode, he had no shot of being able to fight against all those Spearow, and from his perspective, he was only saved because Pikachu came around in the end. But here in this moment, he's able to be the one helping Pikachu, making their relationship a lot closer. They are able to overcome these obstacles, but only together. I had never really thought of it this way before, though it makes more sense watching these episodes back to back. This episode also ends with Team Rocket being firmly established as the goofy reoccurring villains, and our group begins to form, making their way through the Viridian Forest where Ash plans to catch a Caterpie on a cliffhanger note. This episode feels a lot more in line with the rest of the series in the way that it's a middle piece of the story. The beginning follows up from the previous while the ending leads directly into the next. I think both episode 1 and 2 together make for a great start to the first series. And really maybe the first 5 episodes are a good chunk to look at because more and more elements are continuously introduced as it goes along. It's still so crazy looking back at these episodes and seeing just how they set the foundation for the future, and how they're even still able to hold up in modern times with the knowledge of when they were first produced. Like I said, I mostly did just want to watch this to have a fun little time revisiting these episodes given all that's going on now, but I can say I will never get tired of them. This funny and heartfelt anime is what entertained and inspired me every time I watched it. Still to this day, I look at Ash and I see a lot of myself. I'm also an unlucky loser who came from nowhere. I sometimes feel helpless, I get discouraged, but I don't know when to give up. I have big dreams filling my head, I'm excited to make new friends and ready to stand by them in the face of danger. Despite what's been said over the last few months, I don't feel like Ash Ketchum ever really left. Because in a way, we're all Ash Ketchum. Thank you to every channel member for your continued support, especially the great Gators, Cheeseburger Lasers, Gavnuts, Justin R, Cosmo Zero, Michaela, Mr. Pig Puncher, Phantom Pyro, Quago, Volity, and Pastel Blood. If you would like to support, get your name shouted out here, as well as access to emotes and comments, live streams, and some early videos, you can become a channel member today. You can also follow me on Twitter as well, but anyway, this has been GatorEX, and I'll catch you all later.
It's ThinkShip Ash.
I'm Ash.
He speaks over 100 phrases,
Cyndaquil. Attack.
interacts with all your ThinkShip figures,
We won.
and boosts their hit points for the Battle Stadium. ThinkShip Ash comes with everything shown here. Additional Pokemon figures and Battle Stadium sold separately.